Hi, so a while ago I did a video about how I reckon level editing in Unreal Engine 4 has some catching up to do to be as good as level editing in Quake 1. It was really well received, except where it was received horribly. This one is less about the specifics of what's gotten worse in level editors, and more about a related hypothesis that I have about my issues with level design these days. I have no real way of knowing the extent to which this stuff is an issue in AAA, but I suspect it is one. My context for this is years of making stuff in Quake-derived engines and then years of making games on Unreal. My hypothesis is that the effectiveness of level designers in game development has been inadvertently, but pretty consistently undermined over the last couple of decades or so. Let's look at this image you've probably seen a billion times. It's just saying level design is bad and level design used to be good. It's super reductive and kind of silly, but it does bring up a legitimate problem, which is that a level designer now has far more obstacles before them in arriving at a good complex level layout like this one is presumed to be than they did back on Doom or Quake, even if they're aiming for that same level of fidelity, even before art comes in. This is because the level design tools that come with engines now afford level designers who are not competent artists far less power and autonomy. With those older tools, level designers were able to prototype and iterate very, very quickly to create good levels in not much time. With today's tools, the same level designers are basically wading through molasses. Since somewhere around the time of Half-Life-ish, there's been a general trend away from systems where level designers have provided a high degree of independent control and autonomy, towards systems where they're either dependent on artists or are required to become artists themselves. I suspect that requiring level designers to become artists is a misunderstanding of both disciplines, and that the amount of overlap between competent level designers and competent 3D artists is small, smaller still between exceptional artists and level designers. I suspect that whether a particular level designer is dependent on 3D artists or has had to become one to whatever degree of success, they lose productivity to such a degree that they can probably never get back to the level they were at before, or for level designers who are newcomers, they might just never get the opportunity to get that good. In my experience, autonomous, empowered level designers iterate quickly on an uncommonly tight high-speed loop, which is a hard-to-articulate stream of consciousness thing. You make large or small changes in shape, texture, whatever to the environment in seconds without breaking much. Fly around it. Does this feel good? Work with the lighting? Hallway too narrow? How is the player's view framed? What's drawing the eye? How's the color? Go to 1. But this loop is fragile and can easily be broken by kind of anything. Janky or slow or incomplete control over objects in a scene, not having the right tools or pre-existing assets to make the thing you want to try making because it's some kind of special case, having to jump into another program and another open edit export import loop to edit a particular asset in a scene. Maybe you need to extend this wall, but if you do it, your texture stretches horribly and you need to go change the scale of it to fit the new surface. That's broken your loop. You need a ladder, but all your ladder meshes have lengths that are multiples of 64 and your wall is 96 units high. You're messing up your loop even thinking about this. You need a specific shape to fill a gap, but you can't make it with the tools you have now, so you go into another application that uses a different set of controls to make a thing and export it with the pivot in the right place to position it in the game, and now you're like, why was I even doing this again? The loop can be scuttled completely by the level designer having to restrict the amount of changes they make to a scene as more and more art gets finalized, or especially having to justify a change to another person to get it done. A level designer will often want to make changes which, while intuitive to them, are inexplicable to the artist or programmer they're relying on. And since individual, iterative changes are often small enough to seem trivial, the process of going through another person to gain the ability to make them happen seems ridiculous and demanding, so you probably just don't iterate as much. The task of level design can end up being seen as just creating a white boxed level layout which is then taken more or less as final and is subject to very limited iteration from that point on, while most skills above making an initial layout but below what you'd call 3D art are ignored. I suspect that this has happened because level design is poorly understood even by level designers, and its nuances are again hard to articulate. Level designers are used to working within the limitations of tools created for them by programmers who don't always understand intuitively what makes for good design tools, and often probably nobody's telling them. When the practice of using meshes for everything came in, we were all told that we had to become modelers, but I think that those are two disparate skill sets and we do a disservice to both of them by making that demand. I get a weird amount of hostility to these ideas. The idea that good geometry tools are even desirable, or that modular mesh-based level design isn't desirable for every project. There's even hostility to the idea that a person who doesn't know 3D art tools can ever have value as a level designer, or that they can or should be able to turn out a good level by themselves. I'm not saying that making levels purely out of meshes isn't fine and rad, I do it all the time, but I do think that a focus on that method over all others has been detrimental to level design in games and level designers generally, and we've probably been seeing less interesting levels in games as a result. The only company or engine I know of that appears to share my views on this is Valve, with Source 2 seeming to really double down on powerful geometry tools in the editor. Epic has actually responded to my last video and confirmed they're working on some kind of large upgrade to their geo-editing tools though, which is great. But who knows when either of those things will come out. Anyway, I have finished speaking. Comment in the comments if you want. That is all.